Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening, and I think we need to have a little conversation about the whole idea of wearing a mask during this outbreak and the rules and regulations surrounding that. There seems to be an awful lot of misunderstanding, and of course this is not helped by the media. It's unbelievable. Actually, what the media are doing right now is unbelievable. Now, there is an exemption from wearing a mask in a business establishment, and that is if you have a breathing issue, some kind of medical breathing issue. And so people have taken to making badges to put on their clothes to show, and I've done the same. I have a breathing issue, and so I just made up a small badge like this. And the media are saying that the only people who are doing this are protesters, and that they are faking these badges, and they're just trying to get away with not wearing masks and so on and so forth. And I actually wrote a letter to the CBC, to the president, saying that you've now put my life at risk and every other person who has a breathing disability in North America, because you're suggesting that my badge is fake, that I do not have a breathing disorder, and this is going to lead, as you can imagine. I went out the other day and just about everybody is wearing a mask. There was the odd one or two, and of course this will be representative of the population as a whole. I think we represent about 6 or 7% of the population, so you would expect 6 or 7 people out of every 100 to be not wearing a mask. And so the rules are very opaque around this. It's been very difficult, I think, for businesses to understand because the regulations are so opaque. But things like this do not help. And now I'm just going to play this little clip right now, and it is Dr. Fauci basically saying, now remember, this was in March. Okay, this was in March of 2020. And he was saying that wearing a mask is basically nothing more than a psychological prop, and could actually lead to more problems than benefits. So here, just take a listen to this clip.
United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet. But it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course. But when you think masks, you should think of healthcare providers needing them and people who are ill.
Okay, so in the last 3 months, Dr. Fauci has changed his tune, and so the CDC, and here is the prognostication on masks now. Okay, so let's take a look at that. How interesting. The Hill. CDC acknowledges mixing up CV testing data. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, acknowledged Thursday that it is combining the results from viral and antibody CV tests when reporting the country's testing totals, despite marked differences between the tests. First reported by NPR's WLRN station in Miami, the practice has drawn ire from the US health experts who say combining the tests inhibits the agent's ability to discern the country's actual testing capacity. You've got to be kidding me, Ashish Jha, director of the Harvard Global Health Institute, told The Atlantic. How could the CDC make that mistake? This is a mess. So there you go. As soon as the information is going directly to the White House and not to the CDC, they come up with an acknowledgement that they are mixing up their testing data. And you'll see the whole idea has changed about the idea and the efficacy of wearing a mask. Now, if we go over to this study, which is by the CDC again, and it is all data from 1948 right up until the present day, all the data, all the known data about mask wearing, whether it works or not, whether there is any significant difference, and none of the studies in all of that time from 1948 to May of 2020 has shown any efficacy or benefit to stop the spread of a virus. So in 2 months, well, actually less than that, 2 months, they have managed to overturn the entire history, medical experience documented of using masks and whether they work. I mean, this is very confusing. So this is from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Emerging Infectious Diseases. And this is non-pharmaceutical measures for flu in non-healthcare settings, personal protective and environmental measures. And you'll see that this is May 2020, so this is really recent. And this is about the efficiency or efficacy of wearing a face mask. So here we are, face masks. In our systematic review, we identified 10 RCTs that reported estimates of the effectiveness of face masks in reducing laboratory-confirmed influenza virus infections in the community from literature published during 1946 to July 27, 2018. In pooled analysis, we found no significant reduction in influenza transmission with the use of face masks. One study evaluated the use of masks among pilgrims from Australia during the Hajj pilgrimage and reported no major difference in the risk of laboratory-confirmed flu infection in the control or mask group. 2 studies in university settings assessed the effectiveness of face masks for primary protection by monitoring the incidence of laboratory-confirmed flu among student hall residents for 5 months. The overall reduction in ILI, or laboratory-confirmed influenza cases, in the face mask group was not significant in either studies. Study designed in the 7 household studies was slightly different. One study provided face masks and P2 respirators for household contacts only, and another study evaluated face mask use as a source control for infected persons only. And the remaining studies provided masks for the infected persons as well as their close contacts. None of the household studies reported a significant reduction in secondary laboratory-confirmed influenza virus infections in the face mask group. So there you go. Recent study from the CDC saying that masks do not make any difference whatsoever. Now, let's just shift over to testing. Here we are with Dr. Birks, and she's essentially going to tell you that only 50% of the tests would be considered accurate. They're either false positive or false negative. Take a little listen.
I'm just going to do another 30 seconds on testing. These tests are not 100% sensitive or specific. And I'm going to go over this over and over again. So if you have 1% of your population infected, and you have a test that's only 99% specific, that means that when you find a positive, 50% of the time it will be a real positive, and 50% of the time it won't be. And
so it is this kind of thing that is seriously misleading, and it's become dangerously misleading because there was a man was pepper sprayed in a Tim Hortons in Montreal last week for not wearing a mask. The police came in. 3 police officers took this man down, one of which was not wearing a mask, I might add, and they sprayed pepper spray right in this guy's face. And an even more disturbing and fatal situation just a few miles north of me in Minden, where a 72-year-old tried to go into a food store. He was stopped at the door, and they tried to make him wear a mask. There was a confrontation. The police were called. The police followed him to his home. The confrontation continued, and it ended up with the police shooting this man dead. And what I'm going to suggest to all of you is to remember that the police are peacekeepers initially, but also enforcers of the law. They're the enforcement arm of the government. And so when they arrive at a situation, they really don't question the situation too much. If it looks like the peace needs to be enforced, they will kick into enforcement mode, and they will use whatever means necessary to quell and maintain the public peace. So the only response that I am recommending if you are confronted by the police is you immediately throw your hands up in the air and you say, "Officer, I'm a man of peace. There'll be no resistance here. I will not resist arrest. We can talk about this. Put your guns away. You don't need to go to this extent." Okay, you back down immediately because you cannot win in the situation, and that is not where the argument is going to be won or lost. It will be the next stage up. If you go to court, if you're issued a fine, let them issue a fine and then take it to court, and that is the route that you have to pursue. Anyway, let's go through these regulations, and you'll see as we go through them just how contradictory these regulations are and how difficult to understand, and yet how specific in some details they are. Okay, here we go. So here are the regulations from the Halliburton Quarter Pine Ridge District Health Unit. Use of non-medical masks and face coverings within indoor public spaces. Okay, so we're just going to stroll down here and we're going to look at who is exempt from this instruction. The following people are exempt from the instruction to wear a mask whilst inside a commercial establishment. Please note, a person refers to any customer, patron, employee or visitor who enters the premises. The person is a child under the age of 2 years or a child under the age of 5 years, either chronologically or developmentally, and he or she refuses to wear a face covering and cannot be persuaded to do so by their caregiver. The person is unable to remove their mask without assistance. For any other medical reason, the person cannot safely wear a non-medical mask or face covering, such as, but not limited to, respiratory disease, cognitive difficulties, or difficulties in hearing or processing information. Or for any religious reason, the person cannot wear a non-medical mask or face covering, or cannot cover the face in a manner that would properly control the source. So that is your list of exemptions. Do I have to disclose my medical condition if I don't wear a mask? No one is required to disclose a medical condition or reason why they are exempt from wearing a mask. All a person has to say is that I am not able to wear a mask. People who are responsible for a place of business facility that is indoors and open to the public should respect this answer. For privacy reasons, owners, operators are not allowed to ask specifics on why someone cannot wear a mask. All that owners, operators are required to do is make patrons and members of the public aware of the mask use requirement. It is recognized that there are a variety of reasons why a person cannot wear a mask, and people are asked to continue to be kind to each other and support everyone in the community as we work together to stop the spread of the virus. The requirement to have people wear masks within a place of business or facility that is indoors and open to the public is not meant to stigmatize people who are unable to wear a mask due to a medical reason or their age. This is the important bit. No one should be denied service if they cannot wear a mask. Okay, so this is a biggie. How is this being enforced? Now, I want you to bear in mind, as I read this, that somebody was shot to death. A 72-year-old man was shot to death just north of here over a mask issue. Now, it did escalate from the insistence on wearing a mask, but it all began with a mask wearing issue. So listen to this very carefully. How is this being enforced? Every owner-operator of a place of business or facility that is indoors and open to the public will have a policy requiring members of the public to wear a mask or face covering when entering public areas of the enclosed public space. Employees and operators will provide a verbal reminder to any customer entering the premises without a mask that the customer should be wearing a mask as a result of this directive. Implementation of the policy will be enacted and enforced in good faith and will be primarily used as a means to educate people on mask use in public spaces. Very important line. No one should be denied service if they cannot wear a mask. Public health inspectors from the HKPR District Health Unit, as well as municipal bylaw and local police officers, will be involved in providing additional education and enforcement to the operators of commercial establishments. Well, didn't you just say that nobody should be denied service if they cannot wear a mask? And this will be enacted and enforced in good faith and primarily used as a means to educate people on mask use in public spaces, not to shoot them. Not to shoot them. Now, this is where it becomes really incoherent, because remember, they've just told you that this is a public education moment and it's going to be enforced in a good faith method. So what are the fines? As per the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, those who do not comply with the above noted requirements may be liable for a fine of $750 to $1,000 for an individual, owner-operator of a commercial establishment, to a maximum of $100,000, or in the case of a corporation, not more than $10 million for each day or part of each day on which the offence occurs or continues. Well, it's not an offence. They just told you it's not an offence. It's a goodwill thing. So here is the first little piece of incoherent messaging in this ruling. Okay, so here is a great question. What would be the best way for store owners to address the issue if patrons don't have or refuse to wear a mask for both reasons that are legitimate and those that are not? Okay, now the people at this supermarket where the whole issue started should take note, and they should all, businesses should read these regulations so their staff know exactly how to deal with these situations. People who are responsible for a place of business or facility that is indoors and open to the public are asked to use their best effort to ensure patrons and members of the public wear a mask while in the commercial premise. This means offering a verbal reminder to the patron that mask use is required within the establishment, or a verbal reminder about mask use if the person removes the mask while in the premise. No one should be denied service if they cannot wear a mask. Now that's the third time they've made sure that you know that that is a huge issue. No one should be denied service if they cannot wear a mask. For privacy reasons, if you are someone who is responsible for a place of business or facility that is indoors and open to the public, you cannot ask patrons the reasons they cannot wear a mask. All you are required to do is make patrons and members of the public aware of the mask use requirement. Okay, so they're very clear. So I don't believe these fines have any meaning whatsoever, because they've told you several times you can't be denied service if you cannot wear a mask. You can't force a person to wear a mask. You are to use this only as an educational moment. I hope you're remembering all through this, somebody just got shot to death because these rules and regulations were not clear and not clearly understood. And in fact, in Quebec, a man was taken down by 3 police officers and pepper sprayed. The regulations in Quebec are exactly the same, the carbon copy. Taken down by 3 police officers, pepper sprayed in the face. What is going on here? Does nobody read regulations anymore? They put this stuff out and the people who are supposed to enforce them haven't even read them. And here further down, can a person be refused service for not wearing a non-medical mask or face covering? The implementation of the policy should be enforced in good faith, and any person not wearing a mask will receive a verbal reminder from the staff of the establishment. No one should be denied service if they cannot wear a mask. There you go, once again. So I hope that offered a little bit of clarity. I'm going to leave the link below to the HKPR, that's the Halliburton Quartz Pine Ridges Health Unit website, and you can check those out for yourself. I have copies of the most important details and I carry them around with me. I carry that exemption around with me in my pocket, and the fact that you cannot refuse service. You cannot refuse entry to somebody who wants to go into a commercial building and buy something, whether it be food, shoes, it doesn't matter what it is. You cannot refuse that service if there's a medical reason for not wearing a mask. And that medical reason, of course, is clearly stated. You do not have to have a letter from a doctor. It just has to be a medical reason. If you have asthma, asthma is a medical complaint. And whether it's been diagnosed by a doctor or not is irrelevant. If you have the conditions of asthma, then you have a medical right not to disclose that and not to wear a mask, because it may inhibit your breathing and worsen your condition and actually threaten your health. And so, because of the fatality and the way the police seem to be responding in these situations, be prepared. Be prepared to photograph or film the situation, video the confrontation if you're having or if it turns into a confrontation, and make sure that you can be heard saying that you are a person of peace and that you will not be resisting, and that I'm sure that we can resolve this peacefully, officers. And keep saying that over and over and over to make sure that it's understood that your intention is non-violent, because we have to maintain the peace at all times, and the argument will be taken up in a higher court, and that's where it should be taken up. So bear that in mind, and carry the regulations around with you. And if a store manager digs their heels in, take down the name. Now this is advice from Rocco Galati, the constitutional lawyer who's taken on the whole constitutional aspect of the state of emergency, the lockdown and the mask wearing protocols. And he says you film the situation, you take down the person's name, and you begin a human rights claim against these people for discrimination against a person with a disability. And this is the course that people have to take. And if anybody from the media is listening to this video, if you know somebody in the media, I would like you to tell them to stop scandal mongering about this whole tag thing, just to catch up a few protesters. That's all this is about, to vilify a few protesters, a handful really in the scheme of things, and 6% of the population you have put at risk on the street, because you will be seen as a pariah and a faker. And of course this is supposed to be helpful to owners of businesses, so that you understand, if you've not read these regulations, and I would, like I say, urge you all to go over there, cut and paste, or sorry, use your snipping tool to cut and paste, so that you can have these regulations on you, or at least be aware of them, have them in your premises, so that you know exactly what's going on, and you know how to deal with a health inspector should they come onto your premises, because this is from their website. And if you're not from this area, just go to your local health unit and download, because you will find they're pretty much all the same. Okie dokie, well I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked the content, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Take care.